Hello and welcome back to Coast FC, the Canadian soccer podcast focused on all things CPL, Canadian Championship, and more. My name is Felipe
and I'm Mike Rice.
And we are back to look over a match day 25 of the CPL, and what a match day it was. It almost felt like all the results that needed to happen to make the race for the fifth place playoff happened to be as tight as it is now. And I think we should put a disclaimer out there for anybody who's listening for the top four and the title race. Let's be honest, we're not going to be focusing on that. We're going to be focusing on what's the most exciting in the CPL right now, and that's the battle for the final playoff place. That's going to be the main focus. But we will go through all of the games and all of the teams and all of the points. But just if we spend a little more time on those, you'll understand why. You can forgive us why. But before we dive into it, remember to follow us on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, as well as finding us on YouTube under the same name. Now, as a point of order that I think we should do, Mike, before we start, because I know there's a lot to talk about, but obviously what happened last week, we are a podcast that covers not just the CPL, but also the Canadian Championship. And unfortunately, we were not able to get together to record something for the Canadian Championship final. But I feel like we should take a few minutes to discuss it, especially considering that I was there at the Canadian Championship final, working, and it was a great night overall. Especially, I try to not be too biased, but I do, working for the Whitecaps does kind of put a little bit of a bias on me. So I was a little, I can say I was a bit happy overall, despite the fact that if we're going to be completely honest, Vancouver Whitecaps probably didn't deserve to win that final. It was relatively one-way traffic for, I'd say, 60 minutes of the game in terms of Toronto FC, especially there were some periods where Toronto FC were just elite. And it was crazy because I'd never thought I'd see Toronto FC kind of play to that level, especially, they came a few months beforehand. I think it was in March, and they got beat 3 or 4-0 by the Whitecaps. And it's incredible to see the progress that they've been able to make. At least on this one game, they kind of showed that what they are capable of, though they haven't really been able to replicate it all that much this season. But what did you make of the Canadian Championship final from what you saw all the way, through the first 20, 30 minutes up until the second half, even in the penalties?
Yeah, it was. I mean, Bernardeschi got straight in. He was desperate to go to change the fortunes from last year, but he sort of just got more and more frustrated, and things were going worse and worse for him as that game went on. I think it's as much as they dominated and they did have some really good stuff, they're just really, really narrow, aren't they? Like both Insigne and Bernardeschi cutting in. When you got those back three, like Vancouver did really well to keep them out at times, but I mean, so much credit has got to go to Isaac Boehmer, hasn't it? what a game he had.
Arguably, I mean, no, not even arguably, definitely the best game of his career, I'd say. Came up huge. The biggest talking point of the match was obviously the penalty save that he did on Bernardeschi late into the first half. It was a clear penalty on Richie Larea from Matias Laborda. Very naive from Matias Laborda there, especially against a player like Richie Larea. That's the last person that you want to be putting your hands on, because he's an expert on buying fouls. And that's something that I say, even without bias, that's something that when Richie played for Vancouver Whitecaps, he was very good at doing as well last season. But huge from Isaac Boehmer. It wasn't a great penalty either way. It wasn't.
No, but he's missed all 4 of it, isn't he, or something this year or something?
I feel like he's not had a great penalty record, but nevertheless, it's always difficult to save. And even despite that, Boehmer had made some pretty crucial saves throughout the entirety of the game. Blocked a one-on-one essentially as well, and denied DeAndre Kerr when he had a couple opportunities. I think it was Insigne or Bernardeschi, one of the Italians, with a shot from outside of the box that Boehmer just tipped wide. Like he was on something.
He nearly, there's the one where he just nearly lost control of the ball as he patted it down, and he like nearly, there was a little moment there where you thought, oh no, like everything's gone so well, you don't want to gift the goal, ruin all this good work, but luckily, yeah, managed to secure it.
Yeah. And honestly, as the game grew on and knowing the kind of performance that Bomer had, I was feeling pretty confident if it did get down to penalties, and in the end it did. And we actually got to go, media and staff who were up in the press box got to go pitch side for the penalty shootout. So we were right there for it. And yeah, it was incredible. It was super, super tense, but they got to do the penalty shootout in front of the Southsiders, which actually was something that I thought was won by a coin flip, but I think it was actually decided just because of broadcast.
Okay, yeah,
The fact that they did that, and I think a couple of TFC players weren't too happy with that. But nevertheless, it was still a great shot, and Isaac Bomer got to celebrate with his teammates in front of the fans that they're making crucial stops. I felt a little bit sad. Obviously, we're both fans of Stuart Armstrong. He came
exactly,
on,
what a guy.
and what a guy! And he's already shown what quality he can be, even though he's not match fit. I was very sad when he missed his penalty.
Yeah,
Because I would have been like, this would be the most horrible way to start your legacy at the Whitecaps, is because of you they lose the as defending champions the Canadian Championship. But thankfully it didn't go that way. Bomer saved his bacon, and they got the results at the end on penalties. And I can tell you firsthand, the celebrations were great, but not as great as it used to be, because obviously they had another game on Saturday, literally 2 days later, and so they had about 3 hours to celebrate, and then they had to go back to business as usual. But they made the most of those few hours that they had.
yeah.
But yeah, it was a great match overall. Very, very tense. Maybe not as action packed as previous ones, but goodness, did it have its drama.
Yeah, that was really good for Vancouver. Like defensively, they were, yeah, really like excellent stuff. So yeah, it's just a shame. Yeah, so many games all piling in at once. It's immediately forgotten and on to the next.
Yeah, honestly, there's so many things that that are just going that it's hard to keep up. It's hard to keep up. I thought we should spend a few minutes to talk about the final, and talk about the important parts of it. The important parts of it, aka the Whitecaps winning three times in a row. Just subtly sliding that in there. But now let's turn our attention to CPL and the exciting Matchday 25 of the CPL. Before we start again, I know a lot of prefaces, but I just want to point out the table, because we're going to go through all of the results, but 2 points separate fifth, the last playoff position, and last place. Pacific on 28, Vancouver on 27, Valour on 27, and Halifax on 26.
Good.
How did we get here? How did we get here? That is incredible that it's been like this. I mean, obviously we've never seen anything like it, but like even in other leagues, I don't think we've seen a kind of race like this to be so tight for the a final playoff place or the championship or something like that, where it's a matter of 2 points going all the way to the final day. It's at least this close. It's wow, it's a treat to watch, and it's something that I think, as a fan of the CPL, it only can do good in terms of attracting attention and attracting more fans, because it shows the parity in this league is superb.
Yeah, I mean, we are getting to a top 4, maybe a little bit better than the rest. Yeah, there's definitely parity of those two sort of mini leagues inside this small league.
Yes, very true. Very true. Yeah, it does feel like it's basically 2 mini leagues, and one mini league is done, while the other mini league is the one where basically all the attention is being put towards. But nevertheless, it's great for the entirety of the league for
Yeah,
for
exactly.
these storylines that are being built through this. And even though I made all of that preface on the final playoff place, we're going to talk about the first game that has nothing to do with the
No,
final playoff
yeah.
place, which is the 905 derby between Forge FC and York United. This one finished 2-0 for Forge FC as they had a second half surge, the home
Mm,
side, to make it a new home record for Forge FC. They have been dominant
mm,
at home. They now have 34 points at home, which beats the previous record of 32, I believe. 34 points at home out of an available 42, and they still have one more game to play, so they can make it 37
yeah.
out of an available 42, beating Cavalry's record for the all-time record, which was 35 way back in the first
Yeah.
year of 2019. So it's been a while since we've seen a
Yeah.
home record as good as Forge FC. But just, I mean, the first half, we'll be honest, wasn't a fantastic display from the home side.
No.
It
Yeah.
felt like they were taking their time to kind of get into it. But then second half came in and it just all clicked into place and it was one-way traffic there for Forge.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking fantastic. Like I say, it's all it's all been going along sort of not under the radar, but it's almost just been going along like no one's got all that excited about it. It's just like, oh, this board's just playing quite well, like, and they're picking up points, and then you'd have to look back and, like you say, like, oh, hang on a minute, they've been picking up a lot of points. It's this getting to a point where it's fortress titles for it, and the way they're playing, like there's still things they need to work out, which is probably the scariest part of it, isn't it? Like
This isn't them at their
fitting,
best.
sorting out replacing Kwasi Poku, like when they get Terran Campbell back, like to see how would he fit in. Jordan Hamilton's not really got up to speed since coming back into the team. But yeah, still just winning, still putting up good numbers. So yeah, funny. Yeah, it's a funny one. Everything's quite
Yeah,
good if you follow Forge, isn't it?
genuinely, especially at home, you can kind of almost kick back and relax. You know, your team will get a good result.
Yeah.
It's incredible how good they've been at home and how good they've been just in general against
Mm.
York United. It's been a very, very one-sided 905 derby this year. Out of
Yeah.
5 905 derbies, Forge have won 4 and drawn 1. York have not
Mm.
won a single 905 derby this year, which would have to go and check, but I don't think that's actually ever happened before in a 905 derby where it's
Yeah. No.
been completely one-sided. I will have to fact check, but I believe that's the case. So it goes to show even more how strong this Forge side is. And it also kind of
Yeah.
shows how much York United need to sort of step up in the big games because we've seen, especially under Benjamin Mora, how good they can be. But it's in the last few weeks where, full disclosure, they've been suffering from a lot of injuries. They've been suffering from a
Yeah.
lot of conflicts. If you look at the back line that they had to employ in this massive
It's
match,
mad.
you did not see a single natural center back. It was
No.
all DMs in the back three. So obviously, it's very, very tough for York
Mm.
United. I'm not saying that it's for lack of trying, but in this sport, it's unforgiving. You need to try to do something as a coach to make it work.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate circumstances. We've seen a bunch of teams suffer from really bad injury crisis. We saw Pacific deal with it. We saw Valour deal with it last year.
Yeah.
It happens to pretty much everybody at this point. That over time that everybody has to go through those really bad periods where
Yeah.
they have a lot of injuries. But the best teams still manage to make it work, and York United are trying to get to that
Yeah.
level. And I feel like in this game they actually started quite well, despite all of the injuries. When we saw Shola Jimo what a player he's been able to turn into in this York United
Yeah,
squad. It feels like he's sort of been one of the things that's been one of the parts of the injury crisis that's been a good thing. He's sort of benefited from it by
yeah,
having
yeah,
more opportunities and being that sort of bright spark. We also saw Thomas Geraldo come back into the starting lineup and have a couple of, had one massive chance to open the score line early in the first half and played pretty decently
yeah. I thought
afterwards.
he was good. It's nice to see him back on the pitch. Yeah,
Exactly. But it just
yeah,
felt like they had those opportunities in the first half, but they couldn't make it count. And there's no team that is a worse sin to do than against Forge, because Forge
yeah,
were almost always make it count.
yeah. And it's funny, like, because at 1-0 for so long, you did think like something could happen, but I mean, Gmo hits the bar out from a miss kick cross, so you think like you've half of you's thinking, oh, like something could happen here if Forge don't shut things down, but then the other half of you's thinking actually like it's just not going to work for York again, is it? they're going to keep struggling in front of goal, and in the end it goes that way, and it's a nice. I mean, that counter attack to finish them off was really well taken. But yeah, just a few little bits from York. I mean, Ada Cookby got booked really early, which made his life even more difficult going into like getting put into centre back. But did you find the first goal, like the goal he's got to
He's got to do better there.
that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was doing, Vincenzini, there, where he literally watched it
Yeah.
roll about a yard away from his foot and let it roll all the way to the back post. I think in any other circumstance, a keeper would have gone out to claim it or at least put something on it. Don't let it just roll
Yeah.
across you into a dangerous area. I
Just
do
watch it.
think that is mostly on him, but even still, the way that they built up and everything, they were
It's
exposing
really
some
good
holes
work.
that York
Yeah.
United had. Yeah,
And I thought,
that's the thing that they're so good at Forge FC, is just being able to pull apart the different lines of defense and just making those
yeah.
runs, opening up those spaces, and that was another occasion of that.
I did think, I can't remember who it was. I think it's Adam Jenkins on One Soccer doing the commentary. It sort of gave Noah Jensen, he called it a tap in. I think that was a bit harsh. That was a decent, like, it wasn't the easiest. Like, it's not tapping it on the line. He's got defender in front of him, and he took it well, like straight high up into the roof of the net.
Yeah, it was a good finish. Yeah, it wasn't. Trust me, I have seen many players miss opportunities like that.
Yeah.
It's definitely not a given in those opportunities. But when you have quality players like Noah Jensen, then it pretty much feels like it's happened, even if for most it is harder than it looks. But yeah, Forge, after that first goal, they just became dominant in the second half, and it didn't really allow York back into it at all. Really, it was like for me, it kind of, when looking at the second half and watching it never really felt in doubt. It kind of felt as soon as that goal went in, it was either a matter of time before it was 2-0, or it was
Yeah.
just going to be this kind of relentless attack versus defense up until the final whistle. And they did make it 2-0, and it still felt a little bit like attack versus defense at
Yeah.
times. But I think that's lessons that Benjamin Mora has to learn. They have now a few weeks, to try to get as high as they can in the table ahead of the playoffs. But I think their minds must be focused now on the playoffs and trying to get as healthy and as fit as possible
Yeah.
ahead of the playoffs, because they've been suffering through a lot of injuries, a lot of really tough times, and if they want to make a deep run into the playoffs, then they need as many of their players as if they can, available. But more than that, I think also they need everyone to actually kind of like dig deep and show again why they were such a good team a couple of months back. It felt like, even aside from the injury problems, we've seen issues of tired legs, maybe not bringing the same level of intensity, that same level of focus, not as well organized. There are kind of little lapses here and there that, isolated, they don't look that bad, but as they build up, that's how you kind of allow teams to get back into games or to start dominating games. And that's what it felt like in the second half. Forge kind of smelt blood in the water. They saw York start to tire. And then once Forge kind of get into that rhythm, get into that flow, it's very, very hard to stop them.
Yeah. They are, though, the one side, I think, in the that have qualified or for the playoffs that have actually got their U21 minutes. So they could at least don't have to worry, and they can just get people back in and organise the York, and they don't have to be doing anything crazy going into these last few games to try and cover that.
That's very true. Yeah, they've done the job. They're all ready. Now it's just about getting healthy. But Forge, with that win, they are now 7 points ahead of Ottawa with 3 games to play. Surely that's it. That's title wrapped up. They only need, I believe, 2 points from their last 3 games to clinch it, or 1 win, essentially.
Yeah.
So either 2 draws or a win, or Ottawa to drop any points at all, essentially. So it's very, very likely that Forge have clinched the Shield. So I don't want to, jinx it, but congratulations, Forge, because that's what's going to happen. And it was a performance, I think, especially in the second half, that kind of, again, demonstrated why they're there. It's no fluke that they're there. It's no fluke that they've been so good for so long, since the beginning of the entire CPL. And it's just the way, just with Bobby Smirniotis, it's the way that he can just get his team, even when they're not playing well at times, to kind of take a step back, reset, refocus, and go. And then they just shift into high gear. And it's almost like performance art at times, the way that they kind of do that, where you can just see the shift, the change into the way that they play. And then it's I feel bad for the other team, because they have to then go and face an inspired Forge FC. And to be a fly in the wall for the halftime would be something that I wish I could be for the talks with Bobby Smirniotis with his team, because clearly he says some to inspire this team. He did some at halftime to get his team from kind of being equal on level terms with York United to just steamrolling them in the second half. They're going to be a tough team to beat. I mean, obviously, it feels like it's a silly question, but the favorites to do the double right now, the favorites for the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, you got it, especially if they've got their home field advantage.
Yeah, if they win that first game against what is looking like Ottawa right now, then it'll be probably, that's it. They'll host it again to Martinsfield final, and with the home form that they have right now, you don't see them losing the biggest game of all.
No,
right at the end at their favorite time for Forge FC. So maybe we'll just give them it to now. Maybe we'll just give it the title and the shield and the cup now, and let's just focus on everybody else.
Well, let's not write off Valour yet.
True, of course. Apologies. You're right. Let us not write off the mighty Valour. We'll get to them. But let's now move on to the second game of the weekend, which was Cavalry against Vancouver FC. This one ended as a goalless affair. This one was a game that I watched live and kind of regretted it in a sense. Just because, not all nil-nils are boring. I feel like that is as categorically false statement. It's just this 0-0 was, except for a couple of moments. I will give a
couple of bicycle kicks.
A couple of bicycle kicks. That's exactly what it was. It was those bicycle kicks that woke me up. One from David Norman Jr. and one from Tobias Warszewski that almost brought this game out of the kind of obscurity that it was at that point into this is more watchable. But unfortunately, that was not the case. It ended up 0-0, and I think Cavalry will be the more frustrated of the two sides that it ended that way, given how dominant they were in that game. Like it was pretty much Cavalry. There was a few spells, I guess you could say, where Vancouver was trying to do something, but it was pretty much all Cavalry. They biggest issue for them is that they couldn't create any clear-cut chances. They didn't have a single big chance registered. They only had 4 shots and only 2 on target in the entire match. You look at the shots as well, you look at the chances, most of them are from outside of the box. You have obviously the bicycle kick, a couple shots from range, like Ali Musi. You had Michael Harms, which is a player. Yeah, Wojciechowski had a couple shots from this as well. Michael Harms, I think, had one of the only shots inside the box that was, or it was just inside or just outside, I forget, but it was
it was in.
really good save. It was inside? Okay. Really good save. Forced a really good save from Callum Irving. But I think that has to do, obviously, credit to Vancouver FC, but it just felt like Cavalry FC were missing that incisiveness that they have been able to show for most of the second half of this season. I mean, we always joke that Cavalry FC are never a side that's going to, run away with a game. They're always going to be the team that scores 1, 2, maybe 3 goals. But I was actually looking at the results, and this was the first time that they've been completely shut out since Canada Day, July 1st. So it's been quite a number of weeks of match days where they've just been consistently scoring up until this game. And it wasn't, again, like they had many injury issues. You had Ali Musi starting, you had Camargo, you had Wojciechowski, you had Valling, you had what looked like to be pretty much a full strength 11, a couple, aside from Michael Harms, the 18-year-old who came on and I thought looked really, really good for an 18-year-old, just full of confidence, rapid player, rapid player. Tommy Olin Jr., I think, said that he was probably the fastest player in the team, which is incredible considering some of the players that they do have. So they played well. It just, they couldn't get it across the line. I think that's the thing that they'll be the most frustrated about.
Yeah, and that's Cavalry at the moment, isn't it? Such a good side, but just can't put games to bed. You can imagine Harms playing the rest of this season, like another 2 games, I think, and he gets them their U21 minutes. Imagine him doing those maybe the next 2 matches, and then maybe Fraser Air comes back in for the last one just to get him match fit again and ready for the for the playoffs. But they will be the most frustrated because they could double checking the table, and they could be in second at this point if they just put one of those away or created a better chance. With Ottawa dropping points as well, so. Yeah, I'm sure they'll be very frustrated with this one.
Yeah. And it's something that is being sort of the story, like you mentioned, of Cavalry, where they've played well, but they haven't been able to just give it that extra little bit to get the win. They have the most draws in the league, 12 draws in the season so far out of 25 matches. That means half of their games, or just under half of their games, have been draws. It's some of it is good because obviously they're a tough team to beat, but obviously there's the bad side of it. They can't beat the other team.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating for them, and considering also the record that they had against Vancouver FC. Vancouver FC has never been able to win at Atco Field. You feel like that should give you even more incentive to keep that and to keep it going and to go and beat them. Their team that was on a losing streak. Everything was there for them to kind of switch on and show, hey, even though it's pretty much wrapped, we still are going to keep fighting until it's mathematically impossible for us to, defend our shield. But it just didn't turn out that way for Cavalry in the end. And it's a tough one for them. But the tie that will be happy, obviously, is Vancouver FC, because even though they still have yet to win at Atco Field, as I mentioned, they did manage to snap their losing streak. They were on a 4-match losing streak, and they get this really, really well-earned draw against Cavalry. I think that there was a very good response from the Eagles overall, even if they didn't do all that much in the attack. Just defensively, they were resolute. They were more tenacious. They were actually fighting more. I felt like David Norman Jr. came back into the side and showed everyone why he probably deserved to have started some of the other matches that he wasn't even dressed for a couple weeks ago, which is, again, seeing how he played against Cavalry, a little bit mind-boggling. Um, but the focus will obviously be on the young James Cameron, because man of the match, and deservedly so. He was another young player in the game alongside Michael Arms that showed up to the game in a really good way, very solid defensively. Aside from, the early moments where Ali Musi kind of had a little bit more freedom, he kind of really locked down Ali Musi, which is not an easy thing to do.
Oh, yeah.
Ali Musi is known to turn defenders inside out, so he did really well to stay on top of him. He had 11 defensive actions, 3 interceptions, 3 tackles, and 2 clearances. He was probably one of the best performing Vancouver players I've seen in quite a while. Let's say outfielder, because Cal Irving has been
Yeah.
great for the last few weeks, even if the team hasn't been. But as an outfielder, he's had one of the best performances I've seen from Vancouver FC in pretty much over a month. So fantastic for him, especially considering he's a young, up-and-coming Canadian looking to break into the first team, maybe looking to see if he can get a call ahead of 2026 for the Canadian national team. Great for him. And overall, just a solid afternoon that I think that Vancouver can be proud of, given how poor they were going into this one.
Yeah, no, it's great for James Cameron, especially. It's great to see after such excitement about his the end of last season, how he finished the year, and it hasn't kicked on as maybe people would have hoped as the season's been going this year. But there's a really good performance. It's sort of a reminder he's still a young player, and everything's not going to be. It's like progress isn't linear, as they say. But you're right. Like defensively, so much better. I mean, you discussed defensive actions. Like for many of these last few weeks, I don't think any of the defenders had any defensive actions in some of these matches. But it was a complete turnaround. Like they just looked far more cohesive, far more ready to battle and fight for the team, and just like. It's night and day compared to what they were in the last few matches.
Yeah, and I think it's like you mentioned it's the fact that they were able to kind of actually perform and like show up and show that they wanted it. I felt like at times in the last few weeks we've seen them, and they've had periods where they just look nervous, they look disinterested, they don't look organized, they don't look focused, and then teams punish them. And it's something that's been really frustrating for Afshin Gappi. I know, because I talk to him basically weekly about it at this point at the press conferences. And it felt like today was finally the first time where he saw his team really give it their all for the majority of the match. And it's something that I think for him and for the team, they can celebrate to a degree, because it's kind of back to where they should be, but it's also back to the minimum. It's back. That's the minimum that you can do, is just show up and play, and play like you want to win, and play like you want a result. So now they have to build on this, and with it being so close in the table right now for that 5th place, they're just 1 point behind Pacific, but at the same time they're on level points with Valour, only better on head-to-head, and also better points than Halifax by a single point. Every game has to count for Vancouver FC, especially since I think more than anyone, they sort of control what the playoff situation looks like, because their next 2 matches are against Halifax and Valour. If you can get 2 good results there, they can pretty much put themselves right up against Pacific and leaving the rest behind, especially when you look at Pacific, which we'll talk about in a little bit. They have a really tough schedule compared to all of their other playoff rivals. So for Vancouver FC, you need to build on this and just play the best football you've played all season, which is a tall ask, but it is what needs to happen, you need to be better. I mean, defensively, they showed today that they can be defensively resolute, which is something that they haven't been able to be for 4+ weeks. If 4+ weeks for half the season.
Yeah.
But they still need a lot of work in the attacking side of things. They need more attacking patterns. They need more some energy. They need a little bit more, decisiveness. They need a little bit more that kind of just, especially with a player like Ayman Salouf, he kind of brings that little extra edge, that little extra X factor. They need more of that. I'm feeling like I have a whole checklist of things that they need for the next few matches, and it's quite a long list, so I won't go through all of it. But they need a lot more in the attack, and they need to maintain this defensive resiliency that they showed in this match. But most of all, I think it kind of falls on Afshin, because he needs to make the right decisions from now on. In terms of selecting the 11, in terms of substitutions, in terms of tactics, he needs to get it spot on in these last 3 matches if he wants any hope of Vancouver FC clinching that 5th and final playoff spot. Because we've seen before that some players are left out, some players don't start, and you kind of are left wondering why after the match is done, and especially wondering why after they come back in and put a really good performance. So I feel like Afshin Ghapi really needs to get the right decisions from now on essentially everything.
Yeah, it's tough, and like you say, they almost control their own destiny more than others, but adds a little more pressure going in, like when you're playing your rivals each time. Like it's going to be a tough trip over the Halifax next week.
Yeah, going into Halifax is always tough for anybody. I mean, even Forge got destroyed there, so it's like no one's safe from Wanderers grounds. So it's gonna be really, really tough for Vancouver, and then obviously hosting the game against Valour, finishing it off by going away to Atletico Ottawa as well. Though actually, I think it's better to face Ottawa at home right now than it is to face them away. So maybe they'll actually be happier with that. But yeah, it's still a very tough schedule for Vancouver FC. But yeah, they need to make it count. They need to make it count if they want any hope at all. But speaking of Atletico Ottawa, let's move on to Atletico Ottawa's game against Halifax Wanderers. It finished 1-1 in a game that, I know it's the old cliche, oh, it was a game of 2 halves. No, this one was legitimately a game of 2 halves. If you watched the first half and didn't watch the second half, you would have thought a completely different, you would have imagined a completely different game than what it turned out to be, and vice versa if you watch the second half and then watch the first half, because it was night and day between the first half and the second half. The first half, it was all Atletico Ottawa, essentially. It was from the first whistle. I think Atletico Ottawa had like 3 or 4 shots within the first 4 minutes of the game. They were right at Halifax Wanderers. Started with great intensity and focus and overwhelming Halifax. I don't know if Halifax were prepared for that. I'm sure Patrice Geyser had his cheeks clenched during those first 5 minutes, because they were like, oh, we might be in here for a long day if this is how it's going to continue. And obviously they made good on it with Amir Didic scoring inside the first 4 minutes. Really great play. I think that goal kind of showcases how good Ottawa can be. It's Balou Tabla kind of jinking players, making them nervous, finding that pass to Manny Aparicio. Manny Aparicio is such a workhorse, muscles off, and the talent that he has to put that cross into the box. And Amir Didic, I mean, there are a few players in the Canadian Premier League that you would want to be on the end of that more than Amir Didic. Just the way that he towers over everyone. That goal went in, and I thought, this is the Atletico Ottawa that we have been waiting for weeks, for months, even after their strong start. And I was really hoping, from a neutral point of view, that would be something that we would continue to see throughout the match. It was now, okay, you got the early goal. Now let's see some consistency. Let's see some willingness to continue that domination from the players and from Carlos Gonzalez. Get at them, score a second, score a third, make this a riot. Show why your poor home record stops now. That's what I was thinking, that especially Atletico Ottawa fans would want to see from the team. But almost as soon as the first 5-10 minutes went, you almost saw the old tendencies of Atletico Ottawa come back in, which is to kind of sit deep, not clear their lines, sort of allow Halifax into it. It wasn't as bad as it turned into in the second half, in my opinion. But they still gave them a little bit of hope in the first half. You had, I think it was Telfer or Farron who had doing a decent opportunity, kind of threw on goal in like the 12th or 13th minute. That kind of showed,
Fernandez
hey,
went through 1-on-1.
it was Fernandez. Okay.
Yeah.
I was somebody with shaggy hair. I remember that. That I got through, even though Telford does not have shaggy hair. I don't know what I'm saying there. But it felt like Ottawa were kind of forgetting that Halifax, hey, they're still here. They can still attack. It was their own demise too. They couldn't clear their lines. There's so much space in between the midfield and the defense, and it was kind of like a little bit of a wake up call. Like, hello, Ottawa.
Yeah.
You need to.
There's a lot of,
be better.
There's a lot of what seems like naivety with Ottawa. Like they get one goal and they're pinging shots from random area parts of the pitch. Like you say, there's sort of the intensity drops a bit, and all of a sudden, little mistakes creep in. It's just they seem to think it's almost like they score that first goal and they think, okay, well that's the game done. We've won it. That's fine. We'll just carry on and we'll see how the rest of the game goes. But yeah, that's done. And I mean, it's happened so many times now. You've got to learn it's not done. These teams are coming back at you, and it's very. I can only imagine the fans will be very frustrated again.
Yeah, I've seen the fan reaction, and they are not happy after that match because second half. I don't know what happened. I don't know what was said at halftime or whatever. They just didn't show up in the second half. They just forgot that they were the home side. They forgot they were winning. They forgot that they had a super team. Like, it was just a complete collapse unfolding in front of your eyes. And if it was against a team that maybe had a little bit more firepower, they probably would have, suffered more from it. Halifax did well, but struggled a little bit to create those clear-cut chances against a team like Forge at their best. You probably could have seen that lead quickly dissipate. But it was just so mind-boggling for me watching that game. Why? Just simply why? What happened? How? Why? I went through all the stages. I think this stat, I looked at it. This stat really exemplifies what happened in this game. In the first half, Halifax had 46% possession, so it wasn't super dominant from Atletico Ottawa. You're not really going to see that from Atletico Ottawa. They're always going to be a transitional side, but even still, that's how much they had the ball. That even as a transitional side, they had 54% possession.
Yeah.
In the second half, Halifax had 70% possession. 70%, over 2/3 of possession to the away side. That's criminal from Atletico Ottawa. That's criminal, and I feel like that was Cargo going back to when Ottawa didn't have the super team, when he was like, we're a defensive team, we're gonna hold, we're gonna defend, we're gonna stick it out, and then we're gonna go and try scoring the counterattack.
Yeah.
But that's not them anymore, or it shouldn't be them anymore. You don't have the luxury of all of these players to kind of sit back and defend deep, but that's what ended up happening. And I don't think that was part of the plan. I'm pretty sure Cargo didn't want that to happen, but it felt like that's what the team kind of resorted to, because that is their kind of natural plan B. And it must have been really frustrating as an Ottawa fan to see that, because you don't pay money to come see these stars to see them defend for 45 minutes, and it felt like that's what they did for so long.
Yeah.
Halifax was just pressing them and pushing them back until the majority of the game was pretty much in Ottawa's half. And if you didn't look at the score line, you would think that Halifax were winning, and winning comfortably. The way
Yeah.
that second half went on, they outshot Ottawa 8-3. Ottawa had no shots on target in the entire second half, and Halifax, they got the goal. Mekadiche, what a impact he's made for
Yeah.
Halifax coming into the side already. I think that's his second goal already in like 2 to 3 games,
Yeah, I think so.
and huge impact from him. But
Mm.
they looked the more likely side to win it at the end. And I think they'll be frustrated that they didn't get all 3 points, especially the way that the second half went. But like, I don't know, Mike, what did you make of that second half? Because I was perplexed. Let's say very perplexed.
Yeah, it makes you really wonder how Halifax are in this position, like how it's not worked when they can play this way, and why aren't they at like fighting up the other end of the table? It's bizarre, absolutely bizarre, and on the other side, Ottawa, it shouldn't be happening, like you say. Like the players they've got on this team, they've got players who can control the ball. They've got players that can control possession, but they're just not prepared to do it. And they're not sent out to do it. Maybe I can only. I mean, their fans do well within their rights to be very annoyed.
Yeah, it's I'm not one to be like jump on any band like those kind of runaway trains of like, oh, cargo out and stuff like that, because I feel like some fans like to be very reactionary. But if I was a fan of Atletico Ottawa and I saw that game and I saw how the team completely collapsed in the second half, I'd be like, okay, well, some heads have to roll here, especially considering the situation of where Ottawa were in the first half of the season and where Ottawa are now. Because as we mentioned with Forge at the beginning of the episode, it's pretty much over. Ottawa's hopes for the Shield, they were clear favorites at some point, like 10 weeks into the season, when they had like 6 or 7 points ahead of second place. How they've traveled from there to where they are now, it's over. And obviously, fans, players, and coaches alike will be very disappointed with that. But I think this game shows why they just, for some reason, they can't put those kind of really good displays for an entire match. They switch off at the beginning, they switch off at the end. They have these moments of insecurity, and they allow teams to get back into it. And it's frustrating to watch as a neutral. I can only imagine how frustrating it is to watch as a fan, because they shouldn't be doing that. Plain and simple, they should be fighting with Forge for the very top spot. They should be maybe even ahead of Forge with the talent that they have. They shouldn't be defending with 10 in the 80th minute against a team that is in last place. I know it's super tight, so like last place doesn't really mean anything right now, but still, nevertheless, there's still a clear difference between the top 4 and the bottom 4, and you can't be. Yeah, I don't know. You just can't be playing like that. It's just, as a lover of football, you can't be doing that. You can't be.
No, exactly. That's it. It's hard. It's tough to watch. Really tough to watch, and who knows what we'll be seeing next year, depending on how that goes.
Yeah, genuinely, I don't know what's going to happen with Ottawa, especially if they don't win the playoffs, because with the pressure that came with it, with the money that they threw at these players and at this team, if they come away with nothing this season, then heads will definitely roll. Then it'll just be a matter of time to see which heads roll. But we do have to give some credit to the team that, as I mentioned, looked the more likely side to win it at the end in Halifax, because they came out with that intensity that they were met with at the beginning of the game. At the beginning of the second half, they actually did it back to Ottawa, and then after that, it was just Halifax all the time. Lorenzo Caligari was just he's such a good player in terms of like the kind of pace setter, that controller. He was just
Mm.
everywhere, getting the ball, distributing it, getting the ball, distributing, keeping the pressure on, not allowing Ottawa to kind of break out and push back up the field. He was constantly there in possession, allowing Halifax to put the pressure on. I love watching him play. But overall, I mean, Rampersad the same, and so many other players. Like Telfer had a pretty good game as well, leading the
Yeah.
line. Didn't get as many opportunities, but still put the pressure on the back line to force them into making mistakes or bad passes, and then allowing Halifax to regain possession well up high. It was a solid performance all around from Halifax, and I thought that they were a little bit, hard done by for not getting the 3 points, especially
Yeah.
after scoring in the 79th minute. I thought that as soon as that goal went in, I was like, oh, Halifax are going to get a second here. Like, it's only a matter of time. It's the last 10 minutes, but I don't see Ottawa holding on to this. And they just about did. But, we got, I think it was 99 minutes out of 97. It almost
Yeah.
reached 100 minutes there. I'm sure Carlos Gonzalez was fuming with how much extra time there was. But yeah, Halifax, I think, talking about them and their, potential playoff berth, they're only 2 points behind Pacific, so it's still all to play for there.
Yeah.
They kind of have showed, and they have done this more consistently, not as consistently, I'm sure, as they've been wanting to, but more consistently in the last few months, how good they can be just on pure spirit. Obviously they're a good playing team, and they've been able to actually play better tactically and technically on the pitch. But more than anything, I've seen just like this desire to come back, this spirit. Every fight back is spirited. You can see how much it means to them. You can see how much it means to the players, to Patrice. They're like fully giving it. They're all into these matches. Like I said, in the second half, they kind of regrouped and just really were all pulling in the same direction. And we've seen performances like that more as of late from Halifax. And you look at the final 3 games for them, and while Vancouver had the most influence, I think Halifax has the best potential to
Yeah.
clinch that final playoff spot, because 2 out of the 3 of them are at home for Halifax, where they've been very, very good as of late. And obviously, one of them is against Vancouver FC, as we mentioned earlier. So make good on 2 or 3 of them, hope the Pacific drops some points, and it looks like Halifax really are the favorites right now, I'd say, if you just look on form and you look at the schedule, to clinch that 5th and final playoff spot, which would be an incredible story considering their start to the season, where they were just losing consistently. We're waiting for that win. The fact that they've been able to turn it around, and it's something that you have to applaud, especially at Patrice Kaiser.
Yeah, definitely turn their season around after those tweaks and changes, and obviously injuries kicked in at the beginning of the year to some new players, and they've reverted back to type almost, and they've found their rhythm at the right time. They did really make it very tough for Ottawa, and they could well have come away with a win at the end of it. I think the only minor issue, like just because of the time of year, I keep going back to these U21 minutes with Halifax. I think they need to average 106 minutes a game now. So looking at the players that they've used, Thiago Coimbra, but Telfer's doing so well at the moment, you don't really want to take him out. And Jefferson Alphonse, but Nimick and the goal scorer's name's gone completely out of my head already.
Mekadiche?
Yes, already building a good partnership, and Alphonse has done well when he's played, but there's going to be some little things to deal with. Like, and if they're playing this well, they should be fine against Vancouver, you would imagine, if they put in that second half performance against Vancouver next week. But just a couple of little things that they've. Patrice left it late last year as well, didn't he? So it seems to be the way they roll.
Yes, he did love to leave it late. and they're probably gonna do it again because I think even like I was thinking about Aiden Rashinas to
Well, yeah.
maybe come
The
in,
other-
but I think he's injured actually right now,
Oh,
so
is
I
he?
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if they can even call on him. I don't know if he's fit again, but I remember he was injured. So yeah, it might be rough for Halifax and trying to get those under 21 minutes, especially if it does look more and more like they're the team to get the final playoff spot. But nevertheless, they have a lot of things going for them right now, Halifax, and just from a personal point of view, I'd love to see them just from the story to be able to clinch that final playoff spot after it looked far and away like they were not even in the conversation for a
Yeah.
good majority of the season. That would be a fantastic story, comeback story for them and for the players and the coaches. But now let's move on to the fourth and final game of the match day, which was Valour against Pacific. So, arguably, biggest game of the match day, and it fell
Yeah.
on Monday, yesterday at the time of recording. And Mike, you look beaming now because of it, because Valor came away with a 1-0 win, an unlikely 1-0 win,
Very
maybe
unlikely.
arguably undeserved
Yeah.
1-0 win given the way that the game went on. But nevertheless, a win is a win. 3 points is 3 points. And
Mm.
I'll be honest, as a more neutral player in this podcast or with the teams, I was actually kind of happy with this result solely because it created the situation that we're now in with only two
Exactly.
points separating fifth and eighth, and made the last three games even more thrilling going into the end of the season. But let's talk about the game. Let's talk first about Pacific because the majority of this match was Pacific, and the majority of the chances fell to Pacific, and primarily, actually, Idonizer Reed, who played
Mm.
pretty well but missed some pretty big opportunities.
Yeah.
Denied a couple of times from Viscosi, but overall, probably should have done better, especially with the chances that they were able to create. What did you make of Pacific? Strong first half, strong performance overall, but the spurning of their chances.
Yeah, it's the thing. This like trio of like Reeds and Atta and Dyer looks quite dynamic, and it's something that they look like they could really cause some problems. And yeah, Reed's connection was a lot better than what a lot of players in Pacific have had. I think this like the actual quality of the finish, like the shooting was much better. They're getting power. They're getting into like it looked like they were trying to work something, and it isn't just snatching at chances. But it's just frustration again from the Pacific team. It just keeps happening and happening. They're creating chances. They keep doing it and they keep going. But I mean, 14 shots and only 3 on target again. It's just so often it's just not quite right, and it's and there's just no way of knowing how to change this. Like, it just seems destined to. You got to just hope that you can hold on and something happens, and it didn't in this one, and they sort of gift Valour the 3 points in the end.
Yeah, yeah, especially you look at the way that especially the last 15 minutes went. The own goal, unfortunate. We mentioned before the podcast. Yeah, you never can cut across with that with your left foot to try to huck it away. You're basically
Yeah,
asking for it to bubble up and go into your own net. But still, unlucky for Cherry to be able to have to be forced into that situation and turn it into your own net. And then afterwards, obviously, it was late in the game, but Pierre Lamoff getting his second yellow card right after Moses Dyer hits the post. And it's like, you can't catch a break for Pacific if you were
no,
Pacific right then and there. You looked at James Merriman and he was just shaking his head. He couldn't believe
yeah,
his luck. He should have been celebrating the equalizer, not seeing one of his players get his marching
yeah.
orders and essentially sealing their fate there. It's just so wildly unlucky for Pacific, and I
Mm.
don't know. I don't know. Some people believe in karmic justice. Maybe this is a bit of karmic justice, just because how well Pacific have been playing, and their own little bit of luck that they've been riding, and the impact of Moses Dyer. It's all been like fairy tale for them. Maybe this is the thing of them getting kind of crashing back down to earth and realizing, no, that we still have some things that we need to work on. There's still some things that we need to focus on, and we're not quite at the level that we might have thought that we've been, or that we have been showing as of late. So it'll be a good lesson for Pacific, especially when you look at the fact that if they can get it across the line, then they have to contend with the playoffs. They have to look at what they can do in the playoffs. Once again, having to play all available matches in the playoffs, so they want to go all the way to the final. It'll now have to rely on, obviously, the defense not scoring own goals, but also on the attack getting the ball into the back of the net.
It's a tough one. Yeah, I think you mentioned that Merriman just doesn't look like he's so frustrated. Like it's just not been a great season for a lot of his players. So a lot of them are going to be looking back frustrated with their own performances this year. Sometimes it's just bad luck. Sometimes it's karmic justice, but sometimes it's just you haven't played well enough. And yeah, they've got a very difficult road into the playoffs. Like so, if they can hold on to this 5th spot, it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of good performances. So yeah, it could be very, very tough for them.
Yeah, it's going to really come down on to who can be consistent up top for them. Obviously, Moses Dyer has been that consistency, that kind of pinnacle for them, that focal point. But it can't just all fall on him. They need some support from other players. You need Zanata to be a bit better, or because he's had a little bit of a renaissance in the last few weeks. We need him to be more consistent if you want Pacific to be able to get to that higher level. And you also need, the defense to be what they have been for the most part, is quite defensively resolute. And you just need all of those things to come together, because playoffs is a different beast. Playoffs, you have a lot more intensity, you have a lot more drama, you have a lot more, because it's a one-off game. Anything can happen. Form kind of goes out the window, so you need those players to kind of lock in and be able to give the performances that they have been able to give as of late, but just a little bit slicker, a little bit better from Pacific. But they still are they're the front runners on paper for the playoff place. They're the ones that currently hold it. So fate is very much in their hands. Everyone else is just hoping on them slipping up. So they're the only team that can basically decide it for themselves. So they will be looking to bounce back quickly from this in the last 3 matches. But now let's move on finally to your beloved Valour and the game, because even though they were second best for most of the match, they still had some really good moments, especially Temi Antonoglu. Oh, wow. He did so well in that game. The deliveries that he was putting in, I think that was that one ball that went towards Sean Hundell, that from like deep on the left side. Just, his delivery is pinpoint. He's the young Canadian David Beckham right now with the way that he's just crossing it in. It's so good. And obviously, forced Society into this unfortunate situation for the own goal. Won't get an assist for it, though. He is the leading assist maker, I guess. What was it called? For the league, assist provider. Yeah, assist provider sounds better. For the league. So fantastic game from him, but it wasn't just him. There was quite a few decent performances from Valour.
Yeah, I thought Kwemi was really good up front with Hundell, and just wants to get at players and just run at them and get them into these one-on-one situations. Just added a little something different to their attack, which was fun to watch. We'll have to see. I mean, Viscosi had a decent game. I don't remember a major blunder, so that was impressive to see.
Nice.
There was a random punch at one point when the ball's quite comfortably there to catch, but otherwise it was a pretty good day.
He's always going to have one. He's always going to have one.
But yeah, no, it was a really good, strong performance from Valour, and like they'll take a lot of confidence coming out of that, where they know, we were the second best team, but we held it together. We didn't panic. We didn't let our heads drop at any moment, and we managed to snatch something. And that's what they'll have to do if they make it to the playoffs, when they go against these other sides, so they can try and turn this into a little bit of a habit over the last few weeks. It's not the worst thing.
Yeah, definitely. Though it is another case similar to, I think we were talking about Halifax, in terms of the under 21 minutes.
Yeah.
They find themselves towards the bottom of that table there with 3 games to play. And I
Yeah.
love that you put here that it would be the most Valour thing for them to make it in, but then not be able to play because they didn't reach the
Yeah, there's not. I mean, when you look through the players that they've used already as well, I mean, they're going to have to. They've only had 3 players to register U21 minutes. Joe Hansen's got 140 minutes, but yeah, it's all Abdul Benate mostly. I guess he'll be getting quite a few more starts towards the end of the season. Juan Pablo Sanchez, we haven't really seen much of throughout this year on a consistent basis. So yeah, they're gonna have to get these guys back in the lineup, so while they try and push for that 5th spot.
Yeah, it's one of the. I think they're the team with the least amount of under 21 players in their roster, with only 3.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like it's the situation with Pacific where you have an easy in with Emil Gazdov playing every game and accumulating like almost 2,000 all by himself.
Yeah.
So it's something that I'm sure Phil Dos Santos is going to be very mindful of going into these last 3 games, to give Juan Pablo Sanchez and Abdul Benate a lot more minutes.
Yeah,
they'll need it. So another thing that could change the course of what the playoff race will look like. But that is it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening once again. I hope that all of you are as excited as we are for the finale of the season, looking towards who gets this final playoff spot, because let's be honest, that's the race we're all looking for. No offense to Forge or any of the top 4, but that's just how the cookie crumbles right now. But make sure to follow us once again on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, so they can give us your thoughts on each of this week's episodes. And if you agree with our takes, if you have a prediction onto who you think will clinch that 5th playoff spot, let us know and we might give you a shout out in the next show. But until next time, I'm Felipe Vallejo.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And this has been Coast to Coast FC, signing out.